Hello everyone, welcome to my first YouTube video, my first Blender tutorial. So, today I'm going to show you how to make this text, this voxel generation that can follow any text or any object around in the 3D scene. This is just a demo file that I made earlier today, and yeah, let's get right into it. So first off, we'll open new Blender file, and here we just drag this up and press new for new geometry nodes then. So the first thing that we're gonna do is add a mesh line here. We can just connect this. First of all, let me just add a mesh line. Here. This generates a series of points, but instead of the offset mode here, we want to set this to endpoints so that we can control where these endpoints are. It'll be important later. So we can zoom back in, use period on the numpad to zoom in. Then the next thing we'll do is we'll do an instance on points node, and then add a grid. Here. This grid, or this instance node, will instance wireframe mode. Here, we'll instance grids on each one of these points. Next, we're gonna just make this a group so that in the future stuff won't be so messy. So the first thing we'll do, we made this into a group of the size X, size Y in here, so that we can control the size of the X and the size of the Y. Next, we're gonna add a combine XYZ node here, and a separate XYZ. Then, we plug the X and the Y in here, and we plug the Z in here, and that'll be for the size Z. Then, if you go over here to the group node thing, the options, you can rename this to size Z. Here, so now we've got our X, Y, and Z sizes. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this vector, and we'll just plug it in here, and we'll just call it the position vector. This position vector, we'll also plug it into the start location, so that the top and the bottom will move the same on the X and Y axes. So, since we've plugged this in here, we're also going to need to do an math node, and we need to plug it in here, plug this down here, and we have to add the Z coordinate here. So it'll basically add the height into here, and then it'll be that height. So the next thing we'll do is the voxelization itself, so making the different grid sizes. So we'll plug this value, the count, into here, and rename it resolution. And here, that will control our resolution. Now I'm just gonna put this in a frame, press Ctrl J to make it a frame, and go into the node options, and then make this a label, set this to, I don't know, position. Cool. Now, to control the amount of vertices on the X, Y, and Z axes, we're gonna add a math node. First of all, we can add 2 vertices, just so that there will always be these 2 vertices. And then we're gonna duplicate this and turn this into a multiply node. Then we're gonna take the size X and the resolution, plug these into there, plug this into the add so it adds 2, and plug this into the vertices X. We're just going to collapse this, and we're going to do the same thing with the Y. Duplicate this, plug this into the vertices Y, the size Y, resolution, and now it subdivides this appropriately so that these are the same length. Now, it's time to do the Z. One more time, duplicate this, do this, add here, size Z, resolution. And now we've got our points set up. Here we go. So, next, now we've got all this. Next thing we need to do is arrange the position. So I'm just going to increase the size Z so you can see here. It's going to be even spacing. I'm just going to, here, do an instance. Can't type. Instance on points, and then we add a cube here, and then this instance, we scale the cube down. And here you can see that there's a cube on each one of these points. We'll arrange the scaling of the cube later. So let's get to the position. So, first thing we need to do is just add some text. Or whatever object, but we'll do it with text first of all. We can just leave it saying text. But the next thing we'll have to do is switch the alignment to center. This is very important. And then do object, set origin, geometry to origin so that it's centered. It's very important for the text to be able to be followed around by the geometry nodes. So, to get this object info, we'll drag it in here. And then we'll get a bounding box. Here. What this bounding box does is it basically just, wait, I'm gonna just increase the extrusion here. You can see it takes the maximum points of all of these things and just makes a box around it. So now that we have that, we can plug this in to these size values and then control the size of this. But see, when we rotate this, it doesn't rotate with it and it doesn't change the size of the bounding box. So what we need to do is add a transform node. We plug the location, the rotation, and the scale of this into here. And then we add another bounding box in here. So that'll encompass the whole thing. Now the bounding box will move accordingly, and we're golden. So now, we need to control the size of this grid stuff. Because right now, it's still just this size. But we need to control the size based off the size of the bounding box. So now that we have that, we're gonna do a vector math. So we can it'll just be a lot simpler. Do subtract, min in the bottom, max at the top, subtracts the max from the min, takes the difference here, and then when we do a separate xyz node here, this x, y, and z, and now it's perfectly to the size. But wait, it doesn't follow the text around. That's why we need to plug it into the position vector to change the position. So to do that, all we have to do, plug in the location. But wait, here, we do this stays, but as soon as we go into the negatives here, this doesn't move accordingly. Why is that? So basically, we go back in here to the node group. For the z, it just adds this on top of the location. So the z, I'll try it. Everything else goes from the center, but the z starts from here and goes up. So x scaling starts from here and goes like this, and the y scaling goes like this. But the z starts from here. So it's a very simple fix. We just have to I have to get out of there. You can use tab to get in and out of node groups, by the way. Very helpful shortcut. Here we can change this down here, and we do a separate right xyz here, and then a combine xyz here, and then just plug the x and the y in here. But for the z, we add another separate xyz, take the min value, and we plug the z min value here, and now it moves perfectly with the text and it works perfectly. So if you press Alt G, Alt R, it'll reset the rotation and position, but I just like to keep it rotated to make sure that everything's working. So now for the things actually intersecting the text. So we go back in here, then we add another object info node, and we set the object info as the text. Then we take a geometry proximity node here. Or no, sorry, not geometry proximity. Before that, here, just this object info, the geometry just takes the base geometry without taking into account rotation, scale, or location. So once again, we need to do another transform node here. Plug the location into the translation, the rotation into the rotation, and the scale into the scale. And so this will match up accordingly then. Then, up here, first we need to realize the instances. So that makes sure that like all the vertices from the grids will be taken as actual vertices and not just instances, so we can delete them accordingly. So then after that we take a delete geometry and then a math node, which is greater than. Then we plug this value of the distance, not the position, but the distance here, and we have this set to faces. We plug this into the selection. So now, as things get closer, we lower the threshold. It will intersect with the text. Perfect. Now, for all that, we can also make sure that the cubes are automatically scaled. So for that, we just add another vector math here, set it to divide, and we have to have two combine XYZ components here. So we need to divide the amount or the size of the various axes by the amount of vertices, and that'll get us the distance between each of these points, and that distance will be the scale of the cubes. So first we just need the size X, size Y, and size Z here, and then here X, Y, and Z, and then we add this into here, and here you can rename this to, I like calling it, instead of a vector you can make it into a float, and that takes the average of all these vectors, or it makes this vector basically into an average of the three values combined. So instead of vector, I like calling it the cube parameter. I can't spell. And then we can exit back out of this node group, and then here we just have to plug this into the size. Now the cubes will get scaled accordingly. So now to clean this up a little bit, I will take this, take the object here, to there, take the object here, put it into this group input, and then take this, also put this into the group input to clean this up. And the resolution, I'll plug that into the group input as well. And then one final step, to be able to change the threshold here, I like adding a math node here, setting it to divide, putting 100 in the bottom value so that you have very fine control, and then plugging this in here as well, and then you have very fine control here, and then also plugging that into here. I'll just call this the, I don't know, threshold. Is it with two H's? Wait a minute, what is this? Nope, it's threshold. Here, rename this to threshold. The D key is broken. So now that we have this, we can now finally control the threshold, the resolution, and the object that it's with. So when you're in a different editor, for example here, you can just change the resolution to make it a lot more fine, and also you can change the threshold so it's more restricted, less restricted. You can do a lot of these things. Then finally, what you can also do here, is you can change this object. Like for example, you can add another object info node and then change this to the instancing object. You can, by the way, control and right click will allow you to just like slash, quote unquote, slash these links. For example, if I want a cube here, add a, or just bevel it a little bit. Here, hide this. Take this, and then in here, make this cube 001. This into the geometry, the instance. Turn down the scale, And here I have these beveled cubes. Additionally, you can also add a random value node here. You can change the size of these. And yeah, you can do a lot of great stuff with this. You can change other things around. And to set a material, this, I'm just gonna undo all this stuff because I just want the normal cubes. To set a material, just use the set material node here and set it to this material. You can set everything up. And here, if you want, like, I like that there's a little bit of space here. If you don't want that, here for the Z, here, and then X here, then it will almost be flush, or a little bit more than flush with everything. I like a little bit of space in between. So yeah, you can experiment around with that. You can also just have it like this here, and you can just hide the text here, and then it won't appear in the render. Hide the text here. If you're satisfied with it, it'll just follow the text around, and you can change the object that it's instancing on. And yeah, that's how you get a voxel text generator, or voxel generator in general, with geometry and nodes in Blender, completely procedurally. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you find this tutorial useful, and let me know if you have any other suggestions in the future that I could try out. Bye.